Well, hello again and welcome to another episode of the Hyperion Adventures Podcast. I'm Tom. As always, I'm here with my wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous Star Wars loving wife, Michelle.
Hello, everybody.
So good to have you with us. Happy Easter, everyone. We are recording this on Easter, Sunday, April 21st, 2019.
Yes, happy Easter, happy spring. The weather here has been great.
You brag to everybody across the country now about our weather here in California.
This is why we pay taxes in California.
That's true. Taxes, gas prices, everything's crazy.
Right?
Here. But
yay!
You can't complain too much.
We're excited to be here.
Yes, we are very excited to be here. Thanks for joining us today. In the future, you can find us most anywhere you get podcasts. We have our own website. You can find us, HyperionAdventuresPodcast.com. You can also find us on SoundCloud. Best way to get us, however, is to subscribe to us. It's easy for me to say. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher.
Sure. And we love our subscribers, and we hope you all are also sharing the news about our podcast to others. We really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Tell a friend about us. Please, please, please. We really appreciate that. We also love to hear from you on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook and Instagram at Hyperion Adventures Podcast, and you can always email us at HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I always say, we love getting that feedback from all of you, and some great ideas coming in through emails and some fun on Twitter. I think that we really love that the best.
We've had a fun week this week with a lot of our friends out there on social media, and we had a fun week for ourselves. We just got back from Disneyland yesterday.
Whoop, whoop.
Went up for a fun trip up there. We got to do a couple things. One, we are now proud owners of a piece of the Riviera.
Yeah.
So we're excited to check out Walt Disney World's newest resort when that opens up here in December. So that's exciting stuff. And we'll be in there within maybe early on, but possibly for sure within the first month or so. So we'll give you a review of the Riviera when we get a chance to check it out.
Right. We're certainly thrilled about that. We know that there's been a lot of buzz about this resort. It's got some really great features to it. The look is amazing. And the conveniences, having different ways to get to different parks is going to be a blast.
Yeah, so near Epcot and the Hollywood Studios and the Skyways right there with the station. It's going to be fantastic. We're so excited to check that out. Also, by the way, when we went to Disneyland yesterday, we got to see a sneak peek at the new live-action Aladdin that's hitting theaters in next month.
Right, and it's amazing how much they actually showed us. I was really impressed. That was way more than just a trailer.
Yeah.
It really showed a lot of great parts of that movie, and it looks awesome.
We got to see a lot of the opening, not necessarily opening, but one of the big scenes at the beginning in the marketplace that you know very well. We're not going to, tease or spoil anything here, but it was a good look. And we also got to see a little bit in the Cave of Wonders as well, and that was a lot of fun. I thought it looked spectacular. Actually, I'm excited to see this movie.
Absolutely, the colors are just brilliant. They just pop off the screen. The music, we all love it anyways. I know that there's been some, people commenting about trailers that have happened in the past, but this really looked great.
Yeah.
And we also got to see some of the actual artifacts used in the movie.
Yeah, we got they had a couple of the costumes, one for Aladdin and one for Jasmine, and they also had actually the lamp there on display, and they also had some artwork, some conceptual artwork that you could take a look at from it as well.
And the carpet.
Oh, the carpet, that's right. Yeah, I got a picture of the carpet as well. Yes, the magic carpet is there. So if you're going to Disneyland, go check it out. It's there where normally where Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln is. That's where they're screening it. All that stuff is in there. Go check it out. But again, they give away a fair amount. So if you want to avoid any spoilers, then don't go check it out. But we enjoyed it.
Yes, we certainly did. And it made me feel even more excited to go see that movie in the theaters. It really did.
Me too. So enough about our fun week. Let's talk about this week. We have lots of stuff for you today, including a new Halloween party that's coming to the Disneyland Resort, as is a new attraction, and Disney Cruise Line has a brand new captain. But let's get to our main topic of the week. As you know, we're counting down to the end of the Skywalker saga. We got the title just last week, The Rise of Skywalker. That's going to be episode 9. So as we lead into it, every month we're going to give you a look back at one of the previous Star Wars movies that have been released. This is our Star Wars Remembered series. Last month we did Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Today we're going to do Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Right. Based on feedback that we got on social media from people, you wanted us to follow the timeline of the actual story. So that's what we're doing. And like you said, we're going to go into Episode 2. We actually have a guest joining us this week.
Yeah, in just a minute. So let's get to it. Let's not have him wait any longer. Let's get to our look back. Star Wars Remembered, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
I will not let this republic be split in two. My negotiations will not fail.
If they do, there aren't enough Jedi to protect the Republic. We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
You know I don't like it when you do that.
Sorry, Master. I forgot you don't like flying.
Well, you've lost him.
If you'll excuse me.
I hate it when he does that.
Anakin, don't do anything without first consulting either myself or the Council.
You don't need guidance, Anakin. I see you becoming the greatest of all Jedi.
The boy has exceptional skills.
His abilities have made him arrogant.
Excuse me. I'm in charge of security here, milady.
The Senate must vote the Chancellor emergency powers.
As my first act, I will create a grand army of the Republic to counter the increasing threats of the Separatists.
Hasn't been a full-scale war since the formation of the Republic.
You must join me, Obi-Wan, and together we will destroy the Sith.
The dark side clouds everything. In grave danger you are. Begun this Clone War has.
So that's right. That was the trailer for Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, as it came out in 2001, actually, is when that trailer came out. Actually, I think that trailer came out in 2002. The teaser trailer came out in 2001. But let's not hesitate anymore. Let's get our guest on here, who is a Star Wars fanatic, a Star Wars professional. You know him as the host of the Jedi Temple Archives Podcast and a regular friend of our show, comes on all the time. Here is our good friend, Rob LaBarre.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I love Captain Kirk, and I can't wait to talk about the Enterprise.
Live long and prosper.
Right.
Well, we really appreciate you joining us on Easter and taking time out of your day to record this podcast with us.
Well, what better way to celebrate than by talking Star Wars?
That's right. That's the way we always do it. So let's get to it. We're going to kind of go in this in the same way we kind of went through Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Kind of do some of the stuff leading up to the movie, then talk about the movie itself, the cast, critical reviews and such, and just kind of go through it and just kind of give our impressions of the film. So let's get started here. The film actually aired for the first time on May 16th of 2002, which actually happened to be on the exact same date as the 25th anniversary of Star Wars Episode 4, of course, A New Hope, which was kind of interesting in that regard. Yeah,
that's pretty interesting.
George Lucas ramped up the action for this film, if you may remember it, but what really scuffled with this film was the cringy romantic scenes, I think. I think that's where many people had the most problem with it. Don't you agree, Michelle?
I would say. What are your thoughts, Rob?
No, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this. This film is kind of special for Michelle and myself, and it's for a couple of reasons. First, our first real date night together was going to see Monsters, Inc. And you may wonder how that ties into this. Well, that was the film that the first teaser trailer was tied into for this. So we not only did we go see Monsters, Inc. for the first time together, we saw the teaser trailer for Star Wars Episode 2 together. That was really fun.
Yeah, I didn't remember that, but that is so cool.
Yeah, that was kind of a cool little memory. As far as the film itself, Michelle actually flew out. She was still living in Florida at the time. I was living in California. She actually flew out, got in line with me for the midnight showing of it. And, this was her first time that she'd ever gone and seen this at a midnight showing with the big crowd and everything.
Right. First time I ever stood in line for a movie to begin with. And, being the midnight showing and just being out there with everybody, it was just so electrifying. It was so fun to be there. Everybody really ready to see a new Star Wars movie.
Right. So that kind of was our pre-hype. There was a lot of stuff coming into it. I remember, again, we talked about this in the Phantom Menace a little bit. This is really the dawn of the internet for most people. They really got to check out more of the internet around this time. It was starting to get a little more speed. There was more stuff out there. And I remember between the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, just being on like the force.net like every day, like checking out pictures, checking out rumors. I was really excited about this. I don't know about you, Rob. Were you on the internet like I was checking this stuff out?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been the type to get out there and try to get as much of the trailer information as I could. I'm not really one for digging into the spoilers. I kind of like to experience the film, as clean as I can, but I generally have never considered most of the trailer information to be spoilers per se. So I know I would have been out there digging through the internet, trying to get every little piece of it that I could. And it was definitely an event at the time.
Right. There was the big speculation at that time that was going on. What does this shot from the set mean? What does this picture mean and everything? And no one really. I don't think I got any spoilers out of it, but I just was interested to see what was happening. As you know, it was a 3-year delay in between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and there's just so much information and it was funny because this was the first time I was really able to access it so easily. So I was kind of gobbling it all up whenever I got the chance. So as we said just a little bit ago, the teaser trailer finally aired before Monsters, Inc. was released in theaters. That was in November of 2001, and it mostly was just a lot of scenes cut together from the film with Darth Vader's breathing in the background, which was kind of interesting. So I don't know what you thought, Rob, the first time you saw any of the trailers.
Again, I mean, I was just basically looking to soak up as much of what I could glean to be the story out of it as I could. I don't really have any specific memories of things that were jumping out at me when I watched the trailers. Mm-hmm. And, in all fairness, this is probably the Star Wars movie that I've watched the least. So
why is that?
For reasons that you may have alluded to earlier.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I was still excited to see another Star Wars movie come out. I definitely had hopes that, with the technology kind of proceeding, it was all kind of new, using a lot of the blue and green screen in Phantom Menace, and waiting to see how that was going to work out as they came out with Attack of the Clones.
Right. So it all led up. It was interesting stuff. I was eating it. Like I said, I just gobbled it all up. And whether whatever he felt about the Phantom Menace, whatever he felt about this film, obviously we didn't know what it was going to be like, but we were excited about it. The full trailer finally aired on television first on the Fox network between, of all things, Malcolm in the Middle and The X-Files, and that was the first day it debuted on March 10th of 2002 when that full trailer that we just played for you, at least most of earlier, came out. As far as going to see the film ourselves, our excitement, like I said, I bought tickets ahead of time, midnight showing. Michelle flew out. We were in line for this film. Everybody was excited, and we had a great time going to it. Michelle, this is your first time to get to wait in line and go see a midnight showing, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I had actually worked part of the day before actually taking the flight out. So it was kind of a long day, but definitely a fun and exciting day.
No question.
Rob, do you remember your first viewing of Attack of the Clones?
I actually cannot. No, I can't.
Struck a real chord with
the It's really the only Star Wars movie that I can think of that I cannot remember where I first saw it and who I was with. I suspect a lot of that has to do with me having blocked it out psychologically. I've been going to extensive therapy to try to work through that, but I have not been successful yet.
Yeah.
Well, I think
hopefully this is helping right here.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that we were still dating, it was, a lot.
It added more to the excitement of it.
To the excitement.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a big part of your experience, and I'll be expecting a bill. So.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's get to the film itself and the cast. A lot of the people that you saw in Phantom Menace returned for this one. Of course, Ewan McGregor returned as Obi-Wan Kenobi, again, doing a fantastic job. One of the few bright spots this film, to be honest with you. I think you would agree, Michelle.
Right. And here was one of the first times that you could really start seeing him try to capture a little bit more, a little bit of the essence of the original Obi-Wan Kenobi from episode 4.
It really does. That elevator scene.
Yeah,
where exactly. Oh, yes.
Yeah, the chuckle and stuff. Yeah, you can see
funny.
that he was really focusing on trying to bring up some of those idiosyncrasies.
Right. Rob, your thoughts on Ewan McGregor?
Obviously, I love Ewan McGregor. I thought, he really committed to trying to soak up as much of the mannerisms and the speech of Alec Guinness as he possibly could, and it was very committed to making the character believable. Watching some of the extras that came with this particular movie, he makes a lot of fond jokes about his Jedi mullet that he was sporting in this movie.
Right.
That was certainly amusing, and he always seemed to be the person that was carrying the film most of the time, and he just clearly loved playing that role so much, and it was infectious.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. Really a bright spot in this film for sure.
I was watching the extras on the Blu-ray, and I don't know why they put it on this one versus with episode 1, but he was talking about his first experience, of going to a movie theater, and that it happened to be Star Wars Episode 4, New Hope. He was going, he said he was 6, he was going with some of his family because his uncle was in it. And he thought, oh, this is going to be fun, first time I see, my uncle on the big screen. And he said, and then he realized, this was a Star Wars movie, and it was awesome for him.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting way listening to him talk about it and describe it in his, first connection with Star Wars. Again, I don't know why they didn't put it with the extras of episode 1, but I was glad to kind of see that.
Yeah, he's obviously a big Star Wars fan, and he plays. You can tell he wanted to really portray the role and give it respect, and he did a great job with it. And again, he's great in each of these films that he's portrayed that role. The other bright spot I thought from the cast once again was Ian McDiarmid playing, of course, he was Chancellor Palpatine at the time, and also, of course, dual role as Darth Sidious. Spoiler alert. But he, again, every time he's on the screen, you can't keep your eyes off of him. Michelle, I think you'd agree.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's creepy. So creepy.
But you can just tell the way he's working the whole room. He's working the whole universe, actually.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Rob, Ian McDiarmid.
Actually, before I get into Ian McDiarmid, just to kind of piggyback off Michelle's little piece of trivia about Ewan McGregor's uncle, just to point out that he was Dennis Lawson, who played Wedge Antilles in the Star Wars
I didn't
trilogy.
know that. Wow.
Yeah,
I know, right?
Yep. So that was, it's not like it was a bit part.
Right.
It may have seemed like it in episode 4, but he was a rebel pilot that was in all 3 of the Star Wars films, and certainly someone who, in the expanded universe and in later books and the like, was kind of an integral character.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was always a big fan of Wedge, just because of the fact that he was kind of the guy who was in the 3 originals that didn't really get a lot of hype, but he was always there, and he was there at the celebration at the end. When they're doing Yub Nub, at the end, he's there celebrating along with the rest of them, because he survived just like they did and made it all the way through. So interesting. So again, Ian McDiarmid, Rob.
Yeah, I thought Ian McDiarmid was another of the shining, points of light in all 3 of the prequel movies. One of the kind of cool things about Ian McDiarmid was that, especially in Phantom Menace, was a bigger surprise. But when he was cast, you just thought he was playing a senator, and none of the other cast members really knew that he was Darth Sidious until much later in the filming. So I believe that, Qui-Gon had come up to him at one point and was like, "You knew all along."
That's right.
So he was really just the epitome of the Emperor. You totally could feel the malevolence coming off of him, and he really, at the same time, and I think we talked about this a little bit in the Phantom Menace as well, that he seemed so open and so friendly, and you totally bought into that character. And at the same time, here he is, just manipulating galactic events to his own benefit, and working to his own ends.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Totally agree on that. I love his character throughout these films. I think he does a great job, and every time he's on the screen, you can't stop and just stop what you're doing and watch and see what he's doing, and just the little subtle facial motions he makes, and you can just tell, he's working everything behind the scenes. This whole thing, he's directing this whole thing, and it's just interesting to watch it all unfold. Natalie Portman, of course, comes back as Senator Padme Amidala. She's a senator now, not the queen anymore. I don't have much to say about much of her part in this one, because I actually was okay with her in The Phantom Menace, and I struggled at times watching her in this film. But I don't necessarily believe it's her fault all the way. I kind of believe, and we'll get into this a little bit more with some of the other actors we're going to discuss, that I think it's kind of more the way George wrote this and how it was edited and other things. I don't know what you feel, Michelle.
I agree. And it's easy to look now, especially after seeing this movie multiple times and seeing subsequent movies and things, to easily criticize the acting and things. But, I agree with you. I think she did what she was asked to do. And in that regards, I think she probably did a great job.
Yeah. Rob, your thoughts on Natalie Portman?
Well, yeah, I definitely agree with what Michelle and you were saying. I made basically the same comments in the Phantom Menace review that we did. And, what's so surprising to me about this, the fact that George Lucas struggles to write believable dialogue between characters is something that had existed since the original trilogy. And but the real surprise here is that this was intended to be a love story. It was intended to show how Anakin would eventually fall to the dark side and how he was manipulated. And the thing that this movie had to carry off more than anything was a believable love story. And the fact that it fell so far short on that was incredibly surprising. And, the other thing I'll mention is that George Lucas had always said that these movies were designed to be silent movies, and not in the sense that there was no dialogue, but in the sense that the music really drove the emotion and carried the story. And we all know that John Williams is, an amazing musician and wrote an incredible score, and Across the Stars, which was the love theme for the two of them, was an incredible piece of music. But the fact that even that, it wasn't like there was a mediocre performance and it was elevated by the music. It fell so far short that even the music couldn't help it. And you've got Natalie Portman, who has won awards for incredible acting. So it's certainly something she's capable of. So I think that kind of speaks to the fact that there is some issues with the dialogue that was written for them and the direction that they were receiving. And I still think that even at this point, even though they'd done it in The Phantom Menace, this whole concept of acting against a backdrop of things that aren't there was something that they were still struggling to wrap their heads around and still struggling to pull off.
That's a good point.
Agreed. I do agree with that, and especially rewatching it, I kind of see more of that had to be difficult. But and the dialogue, and I just don't think that. And you mentioned this in The Phantom Menace, Rob, that there wasn't the chemistry that we saw within. The original trilogy between Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill. It never just kind of meshed together, and I think that's also part of the problem of why this didn't work as well. We'll get into a little more of that as we get through the cast. Others returning: Frank Oz returned to voice Yoda. This was the first film that Yoda was completely computer generated. So others included Ahmed Best as Jar Jar Binks, a much smaller role for Ahmed Best as Jar Jar Binks in this one, although some would say he makes one of the biggest happenings within the film itself. Samuel L. Jackson's back as Mace Windu. Pernilla August returns in a very small piece as Shmi Skywalker. Anthony Daniels expands it from Phantom Menace, his role as C-3PO, and Kenny Baker is back as R2-D2. Now to the newcomers. Let's just start with Anakin himself, Hayden Christensen. What can you say about Hayden in this movie? I actually kind of feel for him because he was obviously a very young actor at the time. Although he'd done some stuff in the past, it just seems like this whole thing may have been a little too much for him, this dialogue, and just the chemistry, like we talked about in the past, just wasn't there. Michelle.
Right. And I don't think we're going to say anything that hasn't been said like 3 million times before. Although I think, one of the shining lights is there was one moment in the movie that it did seem to really capture his skill as an actor and, bring forward what you thought
what you would expect
what
to
you
see.
would expect to see and pull through the struggle.
Right. Rob, your thoughts on Hayden Christensen?
Yeah, it's interesting because in a lot of the additional materials that come with the movie, you get all these other actors talking about, what a bright future he had and what an incredible actor he was, but I just really didn't feel like he showcased those skills through most of this film, especially, and certainly there were some issues that he had with Revenge of the Sith, and we'll talk about that when we get to that particular film, but and I think, again, it all links back to the fact that most of his dialogue here is related to the romance between him and Natalie Portman's character, Padme Amidala, and it just, there was really no chemistry there, and I think that definitely impacted the dialogue.
Right. I think, honey, what you were talking about with the issue of some of the dialogue seemed to be appropriate more for maybe a 15-year-old boy,
right.
Some of the whiningness that you could understand somebody, who's a young teen or tween going through some struggles of, identity when they feel like they're doing great and
right.
people are criticizing them or trying to pull them back down to earth.
Right. He's supposed to be 19 in this film, but he acts more like he's 14 or 15. And maybe that would have been more appropriate, but it wouldn't have worked for the love story. You can't have,
right.
14-year-olds falling in love and getting married. Although, of course, Padme wouldn't have been 14, but it just wouldn't have worked. So I understand that. But the dialogue was written in many ways for that. Now, the one scene and Michelle was just referencing it just a second ago, that I thought he actually really pulled off was after, and obviously this is all spoilers, and if you haven't seen this film at 17 years old, I'm sorry, but after he slaughters the Tusken Raiders, the Sand People,
right.
And he comes back and he's just, going through his emotions at that moment of, the fact that, this is all happening and it's somebody else's fault, but no, it's my fault. And I did this and I can't believe I did this. And I actually thought that was well done. I don't know you thought so.
Yeah,
as well,
I
Michelle.
did.
Rob, do you have any thoughts on that scene?
I thought it was definitely more believable than some of the other scenes where he was kind of flipping out, especially the one where, Padme is packing her suitcase to leave Coruscant. And he,
right.
I love Obi-Wan, and then he kind of throws a mini temper tantrum
right.
about him. But
yeah.
part of it, too, is, and the immaturity that he displays may have actually been on purpose. You look at the fact that he was 9 when he was brought to Coruscant to join the Jedi Order, and he was too old to begin the training because he already had formed these attachments.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, he would have been, less mature than you would expect. He wasn't raised in that kind of cloistered environment from his very early ages, where they could have, perhaps ingrained some of the discipline already, and he was rebellious anyway, so it's in some ways unsurprising that he acted younger than he should have been.
Right.
I just thought it was a little too extreme younger the way he acted.
Yeah.
I get arrogance at that age. I get that. It just, the tantrums sometimes seemed a little much to me.
Yeah, and what really shocked me the most about the tantrums is that it wasn't even so much his behavior, it's the fact that Padme was able to, engender any feelings toward him when he was behaving that way, because she was so mature. I mean, she had been a queen,
right.
now she was serving her planet as a senator. She was, she was this epitome of maturity beyond her years and service to her people. And that's a big part of the problem that I had with this film is that, they set her up to have all these qualities, and then she goes so far against them, and all the things that would have made her a strong female in the first film, she kind of, you don't see really a lot of those in evidence in this film at all.
Right.
Especially it was, it wasn't like this was a love story that played out over years where there were different, they hadn't seen each other in 10 years apparently.
Yes.
And then when she first sees him again, I was like, okay, I remember you, and now you're a handsome young man. That's great and everything. But, they like within this short period of time, there's all these instances of, red flags that are being thrown at him. Like, maybe I should run away from this person.
Being a little creepy.
And also the creepiness. There was a little creepiness in there too, but just kind of hard to buy into that love story for sure. By the way, other actors that did audition for this role reportedly among them were Paul Walker, Colin Hanks, Christian Bale, Heath Ledger, James Vanderbeek, Joshua Jackson, and Leonardo DiCaprio, among others. Apparently, from what it was written, it says Hayden Christensen got the part primarily because he and Natalie Portman, quote, looked good together, end quote.
Oh, no.
So, anyway, but I look, there's a lot to say about Hayden Christensen in this movie, but I still will go back to the fact that the director, the writer, the editor needs to do a better job with these films, with many of these actors. And that includes, and we already talked about it, Rob, you mentioned the awards that Natalie Portman won. She didn't have a great deal in this film either, but she obviously is a very good actress. So it can't just all be these actors.
No. And I wouldn't say that that's the case at all. I think that a lot of it just has to do with the dialogue. And the interesting thing is you look at the original trilogy and you've got, Harrison Ford, who actually, was part of Lucas's earlier film and was kind of a known quantity, but Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher were relatively new, not faces that a lot of people were familiar with. And I kind of feel like Harrison Ford and the fact that he was kind of willing to play with the dialogue and kind of coax it into something that would work, kind of encouraged Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher to do some of the same, and they were able to kind of work that dialogue into things that could actually be pulled off. And I don't really feel like that was challenged in the prequel trilogy. I think Ewan McGregor found ways to pull off the dialogue in a believable way for Obi-Wan. But I don't know that Natalie Portman or Hayden Christensen were the type of people who were going to go try to make any changes to their dialogue to have it work better for what they felt like they could pull off. And I think the prequels suffered as a result.
Right. Agreed. Completely agree on that. I'm not trying to bash these actors. And like I said, I'm trying to actually say it's more about the dialogue and some other things. But yes, I'm actually happy that Hayden Christensen has been welcomed back into the Star Wars community more avidly recently. He was at Star Wars Celebration Chicago just this last week. I don't think he made any panel appearances, but he was signing autographs, taking pictures with people. Great to hear. We already talked about Ahmed Best as Jar Jar Binks and how he's been welcomed back in. I'm just glad to see that that's happening because I don't, again, any of us, if we were offered these roles, would have been, are you kidding me? Anakin Skywalker? You're actually the guy who becomes Darth Vader. Like, you wouldn't have been bowing over to take that role. So I know you agree with me, Rob, on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a couple other newcomers to this, actually not a newcomer in the world of acting, but who actually I thought did another great job was Christopher Lee as Count Dooku / Darth Tyrannus. I thought he actually, again, commanded presence when he wasn't in enough scenes in this film, but when he was, I thought he had a great presence on the film. Michelle, I don't know what you think.
Right. I agree with you. I thought he actually pulled off the role very, very well. Very believable. I don't know. I don't know what more to say about that. Seeing the fact that he had been in some other movies too, kind of was a little bit of, wait a minute, who is he now?
Yeah, I know I've seen him somewhere.
Right. But other than that, I thought he did good.
Rob, your thoughts on Christopher Lee?
Yeah, it was interesting because Dooku was a character that kind of came out of nowhere. Everyone was familiar with Sidious and everyone was familiar with Darth Maul, and all of a sudden he's got, Count Dooku that we don't really have any backstory for. Strangely enough, we really don't even have backstory for him now, although I know that there's a new audiobook that's coming out to kind of explore his departure from the Jedi Order. But he was exactly what Sidious needed in this film, and I thought he carried off that role pretty well.
Right. I actually thought he was a bright spot, another bright spot in this cast. Others coming into this film, Tamara Morrison, who played Jango Fett, the bounty hunter. For those of you who are Disney fans, you may also, well, I'm sure you're listening to us, you're a Disney fan, most likely. You also may know him from the movie Moana. He was Chief Tui, Moana's father in Moana. So he also, not only does he, getting paid to create clones, he also likes to sing about coconuts. So So, others
Nice.
coming into this were Jimmy Smits, who played Bail Organa. Daniel Logan played a young Boba Fett. And that was pretty much it. There were some other characters that were key, but those were the main cast. Interesting cast. Good and bad, but we'll see. So the synopsis of the film, we've already gone over some of it here, but the movie set 10 years after The Phantom Menace. Thousands of systems are threatening to break away from the Republic. And of course, Padme Amidala, who's now a senator from Naboo, is under the threat of assassination. Obi-Wan and Anakin are designated to protect her. Funny enough, designated by Chancellor Palpatine, so I wonder how that worked out. After another attempt on his life, Obi-Wan looks in to see who is behind it, finds out that this saber dart that kills the bounty hunter that was actually going after her, what came from a planet called Kamino. He goes out there, finds that they're building a clone army that was designated by someone from Master Cypher Diaz from the Jedi Council, and he's been dead for 10 years or so. So it was kind of all brand new news to him. Meanwhile, Anakin is designated to escort Padme back to Naboo. Film takes us to several new planets that we've never seen previously. We've just talked about Kamino, also the planet of Geonosis. We revisit Coruscant, Tatooine. We see Anakin's first real journey to the dark side. We just talked about this as well when he slaughters many Tusken Raiders who are holding his mother captive. Again, this was apparently paid for by Count Dooku. Of course, again, came from Darth Sidious, Palpatine. Obviously, this is all being planned in place. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan goes to Geonosis, gets captured by the Geonosians, and Count Dooku basically spells out the whole plan that Palpatine has going on to him, which is so interesting to me in so many different ways. Rob, it's funny that happened. Do you think that Dooku was just trying to twist with Obi-Wan's mind, or do you think he was trying to approach him as like, look, join me, you can be my apprentice, and we'll take over this role? What do you think, Rob?
I kind of feel like the way the Sith have worked, they've got the rule of two, the master and the apprentice, but it was pretty typical that both master and the apprentice would have a backup plan going at any given time. If you watch the Clone Wars, obviously Dooku was not opposed to having an apprentice during that period of time. I won't go into that and spoil that for anyone who hasn't seen it. Even one of the things I was looking at, I actually am looking to do part of my podcast on the Inquisitors that Emperor Palpatine and Darth Sidious had lined up in order to kind of eliminate the Jedi that escaped Order 66, and he had been grooming some of those members well before Darth Vader, actually became, or Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. So, by the way, spoiler alert.
I know. Oh my gosh.
What?
Right. So, I definitely think it could have been a legitimate offer on his part. We'll never know. Certainly, Obi-Wan isn't likely to be the type of person who's ever going to turn to the dark side.
Right.
But it may have just have been kind of a, hey, I asked you and you said no, so now I'm going to kill you without any bad feelings.
Right.
Any thoughts on that, Michelle?
No, I think I totally agree with that. I don't think I had really noticed it that much the first time through. It was just more like this, conflict, and I think it went along with the confusion of what was being put upon in the situation.
Interesting thing about that scene also is the written dialogue, or at least the way that's spoken from what it was written, is very similar to when in Empire Strikes Back, when Darth Vader has Luke there pinned and, tells him, that he's his father and that, join me, and there's some similar lines within the script there, apparently, or at least what was spoken on screen. I'm sure that had to be intentional by George Lucas. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's much that happens in any Star Wars film that's not intentional on Lucas's part. So
right.
I would definitely say it was probably planned out.
Yeah, I think, and I've seen this many times over, at least when George Lucas, I guess it's a couple times over, when George Lucas was in charge of these films, that he tries to have the feeling in certain parts within the films tie into their counterpart within the original trilogy. So this is the middle part, and there are different scenes, even the final scene where they're kind of after the wedding, again, spoiler alert, looking out to see, kind of looks like the way that Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill are there with the droids, kind of looking out at the medical frigate. It's kind of, I'm sure that's intentional, that they want them to look, have a similar look to them at the finish of the film.
Right, absolutely. To have that, that imagery. Mm-hmm. He was big on imagery, obviously.
Speaking of the wedding, a couple other things that happened is that, of course, we have a clumsy love story. We just talked a lot about that. Anakin loses his hand. Shocking that happened in a Star Wars movie. We finally get a glimpse of the lightsaber skills of Yoda, which was, it actually cracks me up every time I watch it because it's just the way he flips and flies around. Just really interesting. Rob, Yoda?
Yeah, I definitely preferred him. Once they got the art of animating him down, he was a great character again. Never as great as the puppet that they used in the prequels, in the original trilogy. But again, this is another prime example of seeing how blinded Yoda as the Grand Master of the Jedi Order even was. He's having these face-to-face interactions with Emperor Palpatine, and he can't even pick up on the fact that he's got a Sith Lord sitting right across from him. It just kind of goes to how blinded the Jedi were during this period.
Right.
Yeah. Another thing that I found was a very interesting line within this is, there's a scene where Obi-Wan and Mace Windu are walking down the hall, and Yoda's in the little floating little cart or whatever, because apparently his little steps can't keep up with him as they're walking along. But it was interesting. Obi-Wan's talking about Anakin and the arrogance. He's saying he's arrogant, and Yoda says, "Well, that's common." Thing that we're seeing now with many of the young Jedi, even with some of the older ones. And I definitely believe that was a reference right at Obi-Wan, that you're getting a little arrogant yourself. And I also believe that was something that Yoda needed to look at with the whole Jedi Order, that I think they all were getting a little too arrogant and blinded by all this. Rob, I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. And the other, I did want to raise one other point that probably should have been brought up earlier, but you were talking about the fact that, Anakin had been thrown together with Padme sort of by Palpatine, but I think that there was actually the original goal, and what Palpatine had initially said was assign Master Obi-Wan, and I'm sure it was partially to kind of throw Anakin in with all three of them, but I don't know that he was necessarily expecting that Obi-Wan was going to be pulled off and Anakin would be going solo, because I always kind of read it like he wanted to create a situation where there was a chance to eliminate both Padme and Obi-Wan,
interesting.
Kind of in one fell stroke, and totally isolate Anakin. So I think that the way it played out, he still found a way to leverage it and take advantage of Anakin's feelings for Padme, but I always get the feeling that he was kind of hoping to be able to kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, and as we discussed during the Phantom Menace chat, that Palpatine kind of had ways where he wanted things to go, and they would kind of make a right turn or a left turn at times, but he was always able to adapt to these situations and find ways to make it work to his advantage, and that definitely happened with Padme when the love interest ends up blossoming more. He actually finds a way to twist that into being even more so, where he can corrupt Anakin.
Yeah, agreed.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, finally then, of course, the film wraps up with a giant fight, and we finally get the Clone War beginning. So really interesting stuff. As far as the critical reception for this movie, actually it got better reviews than The Phantom Menace did originally. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a fairly decent rating of 66%. Here's where a couple of people were still split. Critics were still split on this. RealViews.net's James Bernardinelli I hope that's right. Doesn't matter, I guess. Gave it a positive review saying that, quote, in a time when more often than not sequels disappoint, it's refreshing to uncover something this high profile that fulfills the promise of its name and adds another title to a storied legacy, end quote. Meanwhile, Roger Ebert, who we talked about in the last episode, gave The Phantom Menace a very positive review, and it gave it all the other Star Wars films to this point a very positive review. Did not like this one as much. He said, quote, as someone who admired the freshness and energy of the earlier films, I was amazed at the end of episode 2 to realize that I had not heard one line of quotable, memorable dialogue. And he also spoke about Anakin and Padme's relationship. Ebert stated, quote, there is not a romantic word they exchanged that has not long since been reduced to cliche.
Right.
So when I think that just speaks to right there what we've talked about with George Lucas, and he just struggles to write a love story. For whatever reason, he just cannot quite write a love story very well.
Right. I agree with all that. And I understand where the critics are coming from, and watching it now, I totally am on board with that, and I do know that it was a special experience for us the first time we saw it. But when that film was going on, and like you talked about the Yoda scene where he was, where we got to see him use his lightsaber and everything. That room was on fire. Mm-hmm. The audience loved it. They ate it up. We ate it up. And the first impressions of it, I think, were a very great positive experience. It's when you start, looking at it and taking it apart a little bit more that you start seeing, all the frailties of this script and
right.
What was trying to be done.
When we saw it, we were, like I said, the midnight showing, waiting in line with a bunch of Star Wars fans, excited to go see it, packed theater. Mm-hmm. Everybody had a blast throughout it, and we came out of there, mostly smiling and everything. But yes, when rewatching it, you pick it apart that much more.
Right.
And now it's, I agree with Rob, that, it's the least watched of his.
Right.
It's the least watch of ours as well. Rob, your critical reception of the film.
Again, I mean, I think in going hand in hand with what Michelle just said, when Phantom Menace came out, it had been, 26 years? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, 16 years at the time, since, we'd seen a Star Wars movie on the big screen. And, this came along shortly after. Of course, we were excited to go see it. We knew what the faults were with the Phantom Menace. We were hoping that a lot of that would have been fixed. And it wasn't like I wasn't happy to go see the film. I mean, for the most part, there was a lot of really important information and good scenes in it. But like you said, I mean, the issue that I ended up having with it, especially as time went on, is the way that things were put together didn't turn out to be that believable. I mean, you've got Padme trying to fend off Anakin, who's giving her looks that would cause most people to go get a restraining order.
Yes.
And yet at the same time, she's trying to hold him off, but she's wearing outfits that came right out of the Fredericks of Hollywood
right.
Padme Amidala collection. I mean, it's just kind of these things that aren't put together in a believable way.
Right.
But, it was still Star Wars. It was still getting to see the story arc of Anakin and Obi-Wan and how we get to where they were in the original Star Wars film. And that's the stuff that I've tended to focus on, especially watching it early.
Right. And that's the way we did it too. I mean, we didn't pick apart the love story as much early on, and the more you watch it, the more you notice it. And but I have to admit, we watched it last night again just to be prepared for this, and I hadn't watched it in probably a couple of years at least, more than just like popping it on here and there for a little bit. And I enjoyed it. Again, it's a Star Wars film. Star Wars films are, we mentioned this for The Phantom Menace, they're like pizza. Even when they're not so good, they're still pretty good.
Right.
And we still enjoyed watching it last night.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fun things to it. Dex Diner.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I want to see more backstory on Dex. That's what I want to see. Some stuff come out in canon now. I would love to see some stuff on him because I think he's an interesting character in his small scene that he's in.
Well, and the crazy thing is that scene is a perfect example of how this could have worked.
Mm-hmm,
and it was,
right.
Again, it's the thing that you have to keep in mind is, they're working to deadlines. They don't have as much time as they want to be able to piece this together as carefully as they would hope. And, so certain things kind of fall by the wayside. But, Dex Diner was certainly a scene that even when I was rewatching it, I was like, yeah, I really like that scene. I really like the interplay between those two characters. The other thing that kind of pops out in my head is that one of the things that was so awesome about the original trilogy in Star Wars was that everything kind of had that, used feel to it. I mean, you weren't in these ultra glitzy locations. Everything wasn't pristine, and I think that is one of the things that hurt the prequel trilogy was that, with Theed and the Naboo Hill country and Coruscant, everything is just so perfect. And that on top of the fact that they were using a lot of technology to generate those scenes, is where it kind of lost some of its heart. And that there's really not much you can do because they were representing what should have been there. It's not like Theed was supposed to be some beaten down city,
right.
But it was. I mean, everything was so perfect that it kind of your brain shied away from it a little bit.
Right.
And again, I mentioned this about many films. I think that this film suffered from editing issues. I really think that if you cut maybe 40 minutes out of this film, you see this film much differently. And now I understand they had to tell the love story in some way, but I think that you have to get to a point where it's not working, and you trim it down or find ways to push it in different. I think that there are really good portions of this movie. I just think there's too many gaps within it to make it be a really, really good movie, and I just wish they could have done a little bit better job of editing it.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, there were some little shining points to it. I know that the initial opening scene when the ship is landing and the vibration and stuff. I mean. To this day, when I see that, it's like, wow, that is just such a cool sensation,
Yeah, I mean, it's a Star Wars film. I will happily watch it whenever it pops on. It's like it may not be our go-to film, but it's a Star Wars film. There's a lot of good stuff within it. It's just you got to get through some of the more cringy parts to get through it. I think you agree, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just one of those things where. I agree with what you were saying. They were trying to do within this trilogy. They were trying to establish the fall of the Republic. They were trying to establish the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker, a love story. The Darth Vader inception story, and they were really trying to accomplish things that you really had to have a lot more time with the characters to really internalize that. Which is why, in regards to the Clone Wars, why that entire series is so important to understanding. How Anakin could fall to the dark side and the heights to which he'd risen before he'd done so, and it would have been, I guess, wise in hindsight if they could have had a series like that going on the side to kind of provide filler between the movies, so they didn't have to try to do so much within the films themselves.
Agreed. Right. I totally agree on that. Yes. We'll get to the Clone Wars series here in just a second, but I want to get to the box office quickly. Attack of the Clones ended up grossing more than $649 million globally from its initial release. That was a drop by about $280 million from The Phantom Menace. And so, obviously, the people who went to the box office could see that after The Phantom Menace wasn't as good as they kind of hoped for, and there wasn't as much hype for this film, and then they found out it wasn't as good as maybe they expected, that obviously that paid a price at the box office. It was the first, I believe it was the first Star Wars film that didn't finish first at the end of the year in box office. It fell behind both the Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers in 2002, and the new Spider-Man that was in the North America, and it fell to fourth actually globally, also behind Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So I think that definitely the reviews and what's happened probably took a toll on. And there's also, you look at that list of films, there's some other great films that were out there during that time.
Good competition.
Yeah. So the legacy of the film really, to me, I liked that we discussed it many times. We discussed it in Phantom Menace, and Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan is so good. I love it. I want to see him come out in either whether it be a series on Disney Plus, whether it be a standalone film, whatever. I really want to see him play Obi-Wan again because he's so good.
No question about that.
I also think that Christopher Lee was really interesting in this role. But the key to me also of this is that This the Clone Wars kind of sprung out of this. You know, the animated series sprung out of this. And for those of you, and we've talked about this many times, but just in case you're tuning into us for the first time, if you have not watched the Clone Wars series, it provides so much more depth to what happens in the prequels and the characters of Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Padme Amidala and many, many other characters that are just brilliant. Really, really, when you get a chance to, it's tough right now, but when Disney Plus comes back, check out the Clone Wars. Rob, I know you agree with me on that count.
No, absolutely. I mean, with the movies, you're getting the big brushstrokes and, you know, the key story points, but as you pointed out, the fine detail and the underpinnings of these characters and what they've accomplished and what drives them is all detailed in the Clone Wars. And without that, it's really hard to kind of connect the dots, I guess, in terms of the movies.
Right. And it does give you just more of a look within who these characters are, why Anakin was felt to be such a hero, where his torment is within him, that he is not just a whiny kid. He also was a great Jedi Knight, essentially. And there's just so much more in depth there, and I really suggest it. And it does actually brings you more light into, and you can enjoy the prequels more, I feel, when you watch the Clone Wars, Michelle.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, totally, you know, gives, like you said, gives some substance to some of these experienced people are feeling, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
But before, that pretty much wraps up the movie for us. But let's get to a couple fun facts before we leave it all together. Just some other fun, interesting things that if you rewatch the film, you might have something to think about. Michelle, do you have some fun facts?
Well, it's the first time that the camera tilts up after the crawl, right? So, you know, that was a little.
Yeah, usually
different.
it would be the scroll, and then it would pan down. It was
Right.
almost you could almost plot it out, and then they totally threw you for a loop this time when they panned up. It was really weird for the first time.
Right. And in Naboo, the architecture, you know, of having like that it's actually the land is just built within itself, or the city within the land, actually came an inspiration from Lake Como in Italy. But, you know, I kind of agree with what Rob had said before. It just was too perfect, too pristine, you know, and I know that like they were trying to give the essence of like a paradise, but it just really was. I mean, every little flower, plant, everything was perfect.
Yeah.
And, you know, it may be too extreme in that regards, but made me want to think about going to Lake Como.
I've thought about that many times. Every time we see a scene from there, go hang out with George Clooney out there.
Right.
In his home at Lake Como.
There you go. There you go. I mean, the only other thing is, and this is just more of a question, and it's kind of a silly question, but the Kaminoans, when I saw the film, and even now when I go back, and is that like Close Encounters of the Third Kind
they did
alien?
that intentionally. Yes,
Oh, okay.
That is. That was intentional to look kind of like traditional aliens that you see. And yes, I think he was giving a little nod to Steven Spielberg there.
Gotcha.
With Close Encounters. I think I've read that somewhere.
Right. And wasn't this one of the films, and you may have to edit this out, don't make me sound dumb, but that where you could go to see the film digitally versus traditionally?
I believe this may have been the first film. There was a film, one of these films was the first one that was actually completely digital. I'm not sure if this was one, but one of these films was completely digitally shot.
Yeah, I felt
which
like
was one of the first ever to be done that.
Right.
I believe it was this one that was the first ever shot in digital.
Right. So, yeah, it's a good point. Good point, Michelle.
Well, thanks.
Another great point by Michelle. Rob, any fun facts do you have from the film?
Yeah, and surprisingly, they're all in one scene. So probably the most, Easter egg packed scene in the entire movie is when Zam Wessel, who is the bounty hunter that attempts to kill Padme Amidala while she's on Coruscant, she's escaping Anakin and Obi-Wan, and they finally force her to ground kind of in the Coruscant underbelly, and she runs into a bar that they follow her into, and they're looking for her. There's a couple of different Easter eggs in this scene. So the first is that there are two actors that were part of the Matrix that have cameos in this particular scene. The first one is the character that offers Obi-Wan the death sticks at the bar. And that actor is a guy named Matt Doran, who played Mouse. One of the members, one of the crew members of the Nebuchadnezzar, and his character's name was Elon Sleazebagano. So,
I love that.
Again, what a great name!
Yeah.
And then a short time later, there is an actor that kind of gives Anakin a sultry look as she walks by, and that is an Australian actress named Fiona Johnson, who actually played the woman in red in the Matrix movie. So they get 2 Matrix cameos back to back, and then right after Obi-Wan disarms Zam as she kind of comes up behind him, they immediately cut to 2 different actors that are wearing blue outfits. The first one is Anthony Daniels, not in his C-3PO costume, and then they also have a cameo of Ahmad Best. So, Jar Jar Binks out of costume.
Cool. Also, George Lucas's daughter is in that scene as well,
and
she's
his son makes a cameo in the Revenge of the Sith. So,
oh wow.
So does George, for that matter, in Revenge of the Sith. But we'll get to that when we get to Revenge of the Sith. So.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah, cool stuff. Interesting stuff. I have a couple interesting notes. So this was the longest film for Star Wars. It was 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was the longest film of Star Wars in the universe up until Last Jedi came out just a couple of years ago. Yeah. It was interesting that the funny thing about this is that, all these films, before they actually get their main title, they have a working title for them when they go into production, and so sometimes they'll have, just interesting names, and you're just like, what does that mean? It usually means nothing. But I think because of everything that happened coming out of Phantom Menace, they decided to make the working title of this one Jar Jar's Big Adventure.
That's great.
Yeah. We've spoken about this before. The Jedi Archives were modeled after Trinity College Library in Dublin, Ireland, which we've actually been able to go visit. And yes, it looks exactly, well, not exactly, but very like that. Just take the kind of neon digital files there and replace them with old leather-bound books, and then you pretty much have the same library. Very interesting thing. Also, the Senate, when the Senate votes to give the Supreme Chancellor sweeping emergency powers to go to war against the separatist forces, well, that is actually taken right out of history. That is the same ploy Adolf Hitler used to gain similar dictatorial power in 1930s Germany.
Wow.
So George Lucas looking back at a little history and exactly what was happening there and tying them together as supreme evil with supreme evil.
Wow.
One other fun thing is that George said that it was purposeful that when they're in the fight within the asteroid field where Obi-Wan is fleeing from Slave One and Jango Fett and Boba Fett there, that they end up doing the tracking missile towards them, the homing missile towards them, and it looks like he releases something out and it explodes, and then he goes and hides behind an asteroid. And George said, yes, that is actually where Boba Fett learned that for Empire Strikes Back to hide behind, out there, or to look for when the Millennium Falcon is kind of hiding on the edge of the Star Destroyer. He kind of learned from that. And again, I go back to how these films have something in common with each other, and it's purposeful by George Lucas to make these little things where you remember the middle part of the original trilogy and the middle part of the prequel trilogy.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, it's that thread, that common thread.
That common thread. So, interesting stuff. Rob, any final thoughts on the Attack of the Clones before we move on?
No, I mean, obviously the end scenes of the film, when you're really starting to see the opening battles of the Clone Wars, they feed directly into the Clone Wars animated series. And as you mentioned earlier, please, if you're at all interested in getting to know these characters better and maybe having a better understanding of what their motivations were and how things played out the way they did, please go watch that. It's, as Tom mentioned, it's not going to be available easily until Disney Plus comes out in November, but it's another great way to get a lot of value out of that membership if you sign up for it.
No question. And
Yes.
that membership does have a lot of value to it. Speaking as Disney fans, that's easy for us to say, but for sure. And Michelle, any last thoughts?
No, I think like we said, looking back at it, there's issues. At the time, there were some really good things about it. There's still some things that, played important roles for the future of the other subsequent episodes. So, I guess you could say it's, a balance.
It's a balance.
There's a balance.
Anakin may or may
right?
not have brought balance to the Force, but we definitely had a balance of the movie, I guess. So, my final thoughts on it are, look, there are struggles within it. There are cringeworthy moments within it, but there also are some glorious moments, some interesting moments, some fun moments. It's a Star Wars film. Check it out. Judge for yourself if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a while, check it out, judge for yourself. And, we'd love to hear what you think about it because, look, I will still, if it's on, I will stop, I will watch it.
Right.
It's a Star Wars film. It's not my favorite and probably my least favorite, but I still enjoy it very much. Anyway.
Yep.
So that's it. That was what we thought about Episode 2, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and our Star Wars Remembered series continues on next month. I got good news for you. The movies are going to get better because, yes, while Episode 3 may have had some problems, I think we'd all agree that was a better Star Wars film than the two we've been talking about previously.
Yeah.
But before we're going to move on, but before we do, I want Rob to talk about one other thing and it's Star Wars related. So, and he's experienced this. We have not had the chance to yet. And that's The Void. That's out at, of course, at the Walt Disney World Resort at Disney Springs and at the Disneyland Resort at Downtown Disney. Rob has been able to experience this, and he's actually tried to talk us into it, which we want to do it. We just haven't had the chance to. But if you don't know what The Void is, it's kind of an experience that takes place. It's a VR experience where you get to go into these worlds. Right now, they currently have Ralph Breaks VR, and they have, which has been running for a long time, Star Wars Secrets of the Empire. Rob, you got to experience Secrets of the Empire. Could you tell the listeners a little bit about it?
Yeah, so basically the whole thing has a story and a premise around it where you're actually members of the rebellion, and there is a secret mission that is actually delivered to you by Cassian Andor in the briefing room. And you actually also get to have some interaction with K2SO. So, I mean, if you guys needed a reason
I know, right?
to really want to consider it, I mean, there's a couple right there. But,
yeah, we're waiting to do it with you.
Yeah, well, again, this summer, there's definitely going to be an opportunity, and I would definitely encourage it. So, but it's typically they'll have you go in groups of 4. Obviously, if it's not super busy, you can go in smaller groups. There's a briefing mission prep area where you put in your information into a data pad. You're going to select a color. Essentially, you go in disguise as stormtroopers in the actual VR experience, but you get to pick a color for your there's some piping and detail along your gloves so you can kind of tell who's who once you get in there. But it's a pretty comfortable VR headset. They put you in a kind of like a flak jacket almost. And so, when you get in the VR experience itself, what's really cool is that what you see around you is what is physically around you in the room. So it's not as disorienting, I think, as a lot of VR experiences might be. If you're walking ahead and you see a door in front of you and you reach out, you'll feel the door. If there's a control, you reach over and you can feel the control. When eventually there is combat in the particular VR experience that you're partaking in, if you get shot, you can actually feel the blaster impacts on your torso as a result of wearing that flak jacket item. So it's really super immersive. You're partaking in this mission on Mustafar, so if you're in an environment that's supposed to be very hot, you can actually feel that heat around you.
Nice.
So it is really, they cater to all your senses. It's a really fun mission. There's some action, there's some puzzle solving, and there's a big reveal at the end of it that I will not spoil for anyone, but it ties into a lot of the things that we just talked about. So
very cool.
Yeah.
About how long of an experience is it? Is it about like 20 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, I want to say it's about 20, 25 minutes, including the pre-mission briefing and suiting up, and it's about 15 minutes in the actual VR world that you're that you're partaking in. So it's not overly long. One of the when we did it, it was myself, my stepson, his girlfriend, and then my son, and he was let me think here. 9 at the time. So he's a typical height for a 9-year-old. And as the guy was getting us suited up, he said, when you guys get in there and load in, make sure you take a look at your son. And you look at him and he is a, perfect stormtrooper, just shrunk down to the size of a 9-year-old. So it's really funny.
That's awesome.
And you just can't help it. Once you get in there, it takes a minute or two to orient yourselves, but after that, it just seems completely natural. It was not disorienting. Wow. It was totally worth the experience. And I would encourage you, pay attention as you're walking around Disney Springs. I assume it's the same at Downtown Disney. There were some signs up that said, mention whatever the catchphrase was, and you would get a free digital photo of your group.
Cool.
And so it's just kind of a fun little bonus. They normally would charge you for that, but you can get a free one if you're paying attention and know what the code word is. So,
nice.
Great.
Definitely worth it.
Do you remember what the cost is of it by any chance?
I think when we did it, it was $30 a person.
Okay.
But when you're considering the fact that when you're doing it, you're typically on Disney property, and
Sure,
$30 for an experience like that was totally worth it for us. I'd have done it again in a heartbeat.
Nice. And like you said, you had a 9-year-old with you, so it's okay even for kids. So.
Yeah, and I would just recommend that when you do get to the point in the experience where you go to pick your blaster up off the rack, be very careful to keep your finger away from the trigger. He was a little less careful, and really the whole experience is going to react to how you play it. So if you pick your weapon right off the blaster or off the rack and start lighting the place up, you're going to draw the stormtroopers quicker than you might otherwise. So we had to battle our way through every inch of the scenario.
That just sounds kind of fun. Right?
Yeah.
It actually was. I mean, I wasn't going to complain. But,
right.
Yeah, that may have been planned. You never know. He may have been pretty smart there.
He admitted it was not the case afterwards, but none of us minded.
We
kind of enjoyed the combat.
What spy is going to tell you the truth?
Exactly.
I was afraid you were going to say that, he got a little antsy with the trigger, and that's how I know that if you get shot, you feel the blaster. Dad, boom.
Well, I never got shot. I'm pretty sleek and low profile, so I just heard.
Right.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's
That sounds
awesome.
fun. And we definitely want to do it. Hopefully we can find the time to do it with you this summer. If not, maybe when you're out here at Disneyland Resort or sometime, we got to do it because it sounds like a blast for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an experience every Star Wars fan should enjoy. And I know that now they've got they had a Wreck-It Ralph VR experience, and they're rotating some other things in there, but you can still do the Star Wars Secrets of the Empire alongside those other experiences. And with any luck, the Vader Immortal that was previewed at Star Wars Celebration will be available out there at some point as well.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Look forward to checking it all out. So, all right, that's awesome. So, well, that's it. That's all our Star Wars input for this week. So let's say goodbye to Rob. Rob, thank you again for joining us.
Yes.
We really, really appreciate it. Again, Rob is host of the Jedi Temple Archives Podcast. If you haven't checked it out, please do. It's a lot of fun. He approaches Star Wars in an approachable way. Like you don't need to be a complete nerd geek that has read everything, knows everything to listen to his show. It's really enjoyable. I think Michelle would agree in that regard.
Yeah, it really brings a lot of new information to light, especially if you're not a person who's read the books. I find listening to it great because I don't feel at all intimidated or feeling I'm lacking, and I always gain a lot from it. And I guess there was some new news this week of a Disney side.
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously we've talked about it, and you guys know that both myself, my wife, everyone in our family loves Disney, and I want to kind of start expressing that side of our love of everything in the parks and the films and everything as well. But, in regards to the Jedi Temple Archives podcast, I'm trying to keep that kind of partitioned off. There's so much information in the Star Wars universe. And as we all know, I was big on the expanded universe stuff that is now Star Wars Legends. So even when you feel like you know a lot, eventually things come along, the reset button gets hit, and you have to start learning all over again. So
right.
I really enjoy it, and I like sharing it with other people who have similar interests.
Yeah, and it really is great. I love it, love listening to it, and I happen to be on it every once in a while, and so is Michelle. She's been on it as well. We have a lot of fun. So Rob, tell us, everyone, how they can find your podcast and how they can follow you on social media.
Yeah, the podcast itself is available on all the major podcast platforms, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. If you listen to your podcasts on a different platform and you would like us to add it, please let me know. We can be reached at jtapodcast@gmail.com, and then on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at JTA Podcast.
Really cool stuff. It really is. Highly recommend it. Check it out. Give it a listen. Subscribe to it. And if you like it, give it a review, a rating, whatever. Believe me, we know it. I'm sure Rob knows it. It'd be very much appreciated.
And tell your friends about it.
More importantly.
That's right. Word of mouth is the best way to go.
Yes.
So, and if you have any suggestions for future shows or things you'd like to know more about, feel free to reach out to us at any of those methods that I mentioned earlier.
Perfect. Well, Rob, thank you again for joining us once again. We really appreciate your input on this episode as we look back at Star Wars Remembered, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And I look forward to having you on again in a few more weeks as we look forward to Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Sounds great. Always love talking Star Wars with you guys and Disney in general. And thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you.
So thanks again to Rob LaBarre, our good friend from the Jedi Temple Archives podcast. It really is a great show. You should check it out.
Yeah, and it's always great to have him impart some of his knowledge on our show. So that's great.
He's a good friend. Him and his wife, Kim, we love them very much. They are really great friends of ours, and we love sharing this stuff with them, as well as we're going to get to share some vacation time with them pretty soon, and that's exciting as well. Let's move on to our Disney stories of the week. Of course, there's so many Disney stories that come out every week. We can't possibly get to all of them, but we try to get to a few of the bigger ones. So I'm going to start this week with the Disneyland Resort and something new that's coming to the Disneyland Resort. And that is, they're announced this week a new Oogie Boogie themed party that's coming to Disney California Adventure Park for Halloween.
I know, that's so awesome. Halloween time at Disneyland and California Adventure is a lot of fun. They really do an amazing job. We've talked about that in the past of how they are so creative with the decorations for the season. So this will fit in really well.
Right. This looks amazing. I'm actually debating we should try and get to it because it really sounds fun. Let's go through it. This is from the Disney Parks blog. It's called the Oogie Boogie Bash, a Disney Halloween party. It's called Oogie Boogie Bash, a Disney Halloween party, and it will add to the fun of Halloween time at the Disneyland Resort, celebrated from September 6th through October 31st, of course, Halloween 2019. Here are the highlights of what's included in this evening. There'll be a new World of Color show, which weaves a Halloween tale about a young girl named Shelley Marie. This twisted tale carries Shelley on an unforgettable journey exploring the villainous side of Disney characters through fountains, lights, lasers, projections, and special effects. Villainous shows that deep down, there's a little villain in all of us. Love that.
Yeah.
I love World of Color, so I'm excited. I want to witness that. That's more part of the reason why I'm thinking about checking this out, because I love World of Color, and new shows for World of Color are always interesting.
And we've seen different ones with like the Christmas holiday time. So it really is exciting that they're going to have that other dimension.
Right. Yeah. It's really, really cool. I'm looking forward to, hopefully we can work it out in our schedule and get out there for this. Other things going on tied in with this, Redwood Creek Challenge Trail. Redwood Creek will be tricked out to a dreamlike environment, apparently. This new experience unfolds in a series of scenes, each creating a hauntingly beautiful dream space of color, sound, light, and shadows as stories emerge from the darkest night to create an enchanting world. That's interesting. Redwood Creek Trail is always an interesting place they can do fun little things with, because it's just kind of a fun little play area within there. It's a great place to bring your kids to have them burn off a little extra energy, by the way.
That's right.
Get out there.
And there really isn't, I don't think there's anything at Walt Disney World that is pretty comparable to that.
Yeah, maybe over at Animal Kingdom.
Oh, yeah, true.
A couple things over there kind of
that's
like
true.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other things, immersive treat trails. Enjoy trick-or-treating at the new wonderfully wicked treat trails throughout the park. Iconic characters such as Mad Hatter from Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland or even Oogie Boogie himself will surprise and delight. Additional treat trails will feature oversized cauldrons full of treats for all guests to enjoy. Free snacks, free candy. Well, I guess not free. You're paying to get in there, but still.
Yeah.
Added candy.
Right.
Fun. Added fun. Descend Dance. It's a new pulsing party in the backlot area of Hollywoodland. Is inspired by the popular Descendants franchise from Disney Channel. So if you're a fan of that franchise, that might be interesting for you. The Frightfully Fun Parade, which is the guest favorite parade, is coming to Disney California Adventure Park. You may know this from Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. Okay, it's the same parade, essentially. Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow starts the procession, followed by Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse, who lead a cavalcade of characters and many mischievous Disney villains who are ready to stir up some trouble along the parade route.
That sounds so fun, doesn't it? It really sounds great.
Also, Mickey's Trick or Treat Show, perfect for young guests. This new interactive stage production invites kids of all ages to join Mickey Mouse and his palace as they throw a one-of-a-kind Halloween party, enjoy dancing, not so frightening scary tales, and candy. Yes, more candy.
Yeah.
At the Disney Theater in Hollywoodland. And also, there'll be character encounters, meet beloved Disney characters and villains, too. And don't be surprised at who you discover on the Halloween party. Ready for photos and greetings. So that's, really fun stuff. Really cool.
I'm glad they're adding to the Halloween season this time.
Yeah, and again, we're thinking about doing that. I like that it's at Disney California Adventure Park too, because they most recently, up until we're going to just next week, we're going to do the Disneyland After Dark Heroes Assemble, which will be our first nighttime event at Disney California Adventure Park, and we're excited about that. I'm glad that this is going over there as well. Gives more options, and of course, the obvious reason why they're doing this is because they know there's going to be so much going on with the opening of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge over at Disneyland Park.
Right, that they can pull some activities to the other park.
But this sounds really cool. And I really am thinking we should try and get this done. If you want to join in the fun, the reservations are available, or tickets go on sale anyway, beginning on April 23rd. So it's just a couple days from now. Again, this is April 21st. So they go on sale on Tuesday. That's to Disney Vacation Club members and Disney Visa card holders, as well as resort annual pass holders. For the general public, they go on sale on April 30th, and they have the dates on the website if you want to look at all the various dates and check out what might work for you. But it's various dates throughout as we lead up to Halloween.
Yeah, so
very cool.
Check it out.
Check it out. Very cool, and we may be there one of those nights. I love also people come in costume and everything for those things.
Right.
And it's just a lot of fun.
A lot more
fun events.
Enthusiasm in the air.
Yeah, really good stuff. So we'll definitely be looking into that. Another news this week, more Disneyland Resort news. They officially announced this week that Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is also coming to the Disneyland Resort. Yay! Again, from the Disney Parks blog, Disneyland Park guests will be able to step into a cartoon world and join Mickey and his friends on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway coming to Mickey's Toontown in 2022.
So it's good to have something new going there. That area hasn't had a lot of refurbishments or additions in quite a long time.
Wild, yeah. So it's good that they're going to add a third attraction over to that area. What it sounds like, that's fun. So anyway, the first major Mickey-themed ride-through attraction at Disneyland Park will put you inside the wacky and unpredictable world of Mickey Mouse cartoon short, where anything can happen. Once you step into the cartoon world of Mickey and Minnie, you'll board a train with Goofy as the engineer. Then one magical moment after the next leads you to a zany, out-of-control adventure filled with surprising twists and turns. So
cute.
Yeah, and this is also going to be opening up, of course, we knew this ahead of time, at Walt Disney World Resort at Disney's Hollywood Studios, back where the Great Movie Ride used to be at the Grauman's Chinese Theater there. That has been delayed. They thought it might be open this year at some point, 2019. They've now pushed it back till spring of 2020 is when it looks like that'll be opening. But, it's too bad it's going to be delayed, and it's not going to be ready like we're going to be out there in June. Right. We were hoping it might be, but not bad. I'd rather see them get it right than try and rush this to get it open too early.
That's true. That is a good point.
So look forward to
we'll
both.
Be patient. There's a lot of other great things going on. So
yeah, I've heard there's a couple things opening up this year. I don't know. But
one or two.
Don't know what we could possibly do at the parks if Mickey's Runaway Railway's not open. Minnie's Runaway Railway's not open anyway. So speaking of Minnie.
Yeah.
Hey, Disney Cruise Line announced its new captain this week. That's right. It's Minnie Mouse.
Yes.
It's so exciting.
That is exciting.
This from the Disney Cruise Line blog. Wait, by the way, if you're like Disney Cruises and want to go on Disney Cruises or have been in the past and you don't know the Disney Cruise Line blog, it is a great site for all things Disney Cruise Line. Check it out. It's a really good blog. What he says is after 20 plus years of serving as first mate, Minnie Mouse has been promoted to captain.
Yay.
In Minnie's new role, she will oversee all new youth nautical program with maritime scholarships as the next generation of young leaders and dreamers set sail into their futures. Disney Cruise Line will be working to inspire the next generation of female leaders in the maritime industry by funding scholarships to empower girls and young women to pursue careers in the cruise industry.
That's so awesome. And I love also that they're going to be, having some additional programs that are, STEM related. I think that's great to have that type of, what do I want to say here?
Empowerment,
right. For, and that kids can be on the cruise. They're going to have an amazing time. But to have that also, that type of experience is great to hear. And love Captain Minnie.
No, you did love Captain Minnie. That's so awesome.
That
it's
is.
so deserved of that title. I think it's wonderful. You can already see her. She's already out on the 4 Disney cruise ships. And interesting is that I believe this is the first time we've seen Minnie Mouse wearing pants. I think she's always been in a skirt up until this point. And I've also seen pictures of her as Captain Minnie in a skirt, but the pictures that were posed for originally were she was in pants. Which is interesting. And I don't recall ever seeing her in pants before, but she always, as always, pulled them off as stylishly as Minnie always does. She looked fantastic.
She does.
And, I guess, with 3 new ships coming in the next several years, that's going to be 7 Disney cruise ships. Of course, they're going to need more captains.
Right?
So, Minnie was, definitely needed to step into that role for sure.
Absolutely.
So that's really good news. Very exciting stuff, and look forward to seeing Captain Minnie, when we get onto our next Disney cruise, which right now is going to be the Panama Canal next year that we're doing.
Right. So, but yeah, I think you're right. I think it is the first time Minnie Mouse is wearing pants.
Yeah,
so.
Very cool. Good stuff. Good stuff. So that's it for the Disney stories of the week. Just went through them really quickly because we were really long on our Star Wars episode, as we tend to be when we talk Star Wars. There's so much to talk about, so we tend to go really long. So
sorry.
Just wanted to get to the... No, I'm not sorry. It was important talking, and we had a great chat about an interesting movie that can pull people in many different ways. So, but we never wrap up an episode without getting to our vacation tips of the week. Something that might help you out on your next vacation, whether it be at Walt Disney World Resort, Disneyland Resort, whether you're going to Disney Cruise Line, Run Disney, even just going to see the films, whatever you may be doing, we try and give you a little tip that might help you out. And of course, we always start with Michelle because she has just the absolute best tips. Like, her tips are so good that I often copy them and claim them as my own because that's how good they are, that I need to take credit for them because my tips just pale in comparison to hers.
So funny.
Let's get to it. Let's quickly get to Michelle's tip of the week.
Right. And I'll try to wrap this up quickly, too. So if you've listened in the past, you may have heard one of my tips talks about looking up. And it's, the emphasis is that there's so much around that don't take for granted just what's going on at your eye level when you're at a Disney park, that there's a lot of great, wonderful things if you look up.
I believe Lin-Manuel sang about that, as a matter of fact.
Right, that's right. Return. I'm still waiting on my check, Lynn.
Or just come on the show.
I know.
That'd be fine, Lynn. Please, just come on the show.
But anyways, this tip is kind of similar in nature, but not saying look up again. It's more listen, because there's also some fun things related to sound that you can experience at the parks. So I'm really going to focus today on Disneyland. And first off, if you're like us, you're probably going to make at some point a stop at Starbucks on Main Street, USA. But if you don't have to go in and purchase anything. But if you go inside, immediately on the wall inside, there are 2 old-fashioned phones on the wall that are near that entrance. And pick them up, and you can hear some real fun conversations between friends. It's, kind of like the old party line theme. So it's just kind of fun hearing, doing that. And also on Main Street, USA, take a little stroll down on that side area walkway. They have some tables and chairs there as well, but you can
kind of by where the lockers are.
Right, exactly. But there's also other types of ambient sound going on there. So if you again look up, there is a window that has on it that it's the piano lesson shop, and there it has the window cracked, and you can hear piano lessons going on there. There's also a dentist office.
That one was funny. We heard that one when we were out there.
Yeah. So there's a dentist office there, and it's not, again, these things, they're not a continuous, I don't know how to explain this. At any given moment, you might have to wait for the sounds to come again. Right, intermittent. But anyways, the dentist office is really funny. And then also down that street, if you listen hard, you might hear Pluto and friends getting ready as they prepare to come on stage. So some fun little sounds there. In Fantasyland, in front of Snow White's Scary Adventure attraction, I'll just say there's a brass apple there. Go take the moment and rub the brass apple and, enjoy that as well. In addition to sound, there's some other little details. Going back again to Main Street, USA, there is a door that's a Disneyland casting agency door. And there you'll also see a poster with some real creative jobs available if you want to have a job in Disneyland.
Right.
So, anyways, none of these things are super phenomenal. They're just little cute touches to help.
Little details.
Yeah, immerse you into what the Imagineers put together for you to experience in the park. So next time you take a trip to the park, take a few moments to enjoy some of these little touches that are there to make the experience that much more rich.
It is. Disney does such a good job with that, and that there's so many little tiny touches, like you said, little knickknacks, little details that really immerse you within the experience so well. And a lot of it you don't really even notice. It's just there. And like the background music that's playing down Main Street and down various different areas of the park that, you don't really notice it, but it's there all the time. And it helps you feel a certain way as you go into the parks. And I think you would notice it if it was suddenly gone, like they stopped the soundtrack. It would sound a lot different. Disney, whether it be Disneyland or the Magic Kingdom or any of the other parks, would sound a little different or feel a little differently to you. But it's just all these little touches that are everywhere that you can go to the parks hundreds of times, and we've been a lot, not that many, but a lot, and we still see these little things that we've never seen before. We did it just yesterday when we were out at the park. We saw things that we had never seen before.
Right.
And again,
that casting agency poster is
I'd never
hilarious.
seen that before. I'd seen the casting agency door many times.
Right.
I never paid close attention to that, and it's great. Some of these job postings on there are just classic and wonderful. It's great. I love it. So that's a lot of fun. So yes, definitely take the time and enjoy the parks, even just the little tiny details. And it really, really it helps your experience so much more. And even if you don't stop to take the time, just know that those are out there and they are making your experience that much better, and that Disney does that regularly for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So cool. Good tip. Michelle's tip. Always the best. I'll be stealing that in about 3 months. I'll be bringing that up. And so just to let you know, I'll just prepare. I'm writing it on my calendar right now. So in July, steal this tip. Let's get to my tip, which is not stolen from Michelle. So
let's see.
So it won't be that good. But my quick tip, we just talked about Captain Minnie and Disney Cruise Line. That's exciting stuff. So my tip is a Disney Cruise Line tip, and that is for something when you're enjoying what the entertainment is aboard a Disney Cruise Line ship. Now, we all know, if you've been on Disney Cruise Line, at least you've heard of it, the entertainment that's on board a Disney Cruise Line ship is top-notch. in our opinion, the best at sea. You can't find better. They have first-run Disney movies there, and then Broadway type quality shows in the evenings. You can't beat it. Now, right outside both the Buena Vista Theater, where they show the movies, and the Walt Disney Theater, where they have the stage shows, there are stands where you can buy candy and snacks and popcorn. You can do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Definitely, treat the kids. You're on vacation. Treat yourself. You're on vacation. Go ahead. But if you wanted to save just a little bit of money and not go out there and every time you're going to a show, be buying popcorn, be buying candy and everything, here's a little tip for something you could do instead. If the buffet is still open, go up there and hit up some of the snacks from the buffet. And you can bring those into the theater. Go up there and pick up a few things that are easily handled, cookies, some of the stuff that you can bring into the theater and eat easily. Go ahead and grab it from there. I mean, it's included in the price of your cruise.
That's true.
Go in and take advantage of it. And you could do that, like I said, for the movies for sure. Sometimes it's still available for you when you're doing the nighttime shows, especially if you're doing the early show. If you have late dining, you can grab a couple snacks there. Of course, don't grab too much because you don't want to ruin your meal coming up, because they are great meals aboard Disney Cruise Line. But that is one way to do it. You can also order straight from room service into your room and get things that are delivered to you. Yes, you should tip whoever's bringing that to you $1 or $2, depending on how much they're bringing. But you can get cookies delivered to you, sandwiches. You can even get Mickey bars delivered right to your room and take a Mickey bar down into the movie or down into the show. And that's another way, and that's open all the time. You can do that at any time. So just one little way to kind of get those snacks. If you want those snacks when you're at these shows, keep the kids happy, keep yourself happy, have a good time, and not be paying all the time for the popcorn and the candy and everything else. You get that stuff that's already kind of included within your price.
Right, as well as the soft drinks. So they have the soft drink stations
and
as well.
They also have the soft serve ice cream upstairs as well. That's also included within your price. Also, if you are splurged and are doing concierge, be sure and hit up your concierge host before you go to any of these shows, because they will give you bags of popcorn a lot of times, or other things that they have that you can go take down to the show. So definitely take advantage of that. Don't miss out on that chance. And also, a lot of times in these the concierge lounge, there are little snacks and everything as well in there that you might want to bring with you too, and sodas and water and such. So
great tip.
Thank you.
Good tip.
Not as good as your tip.
Oh, I don't know. That was really good.
But at least this one is mine. I can claim this one as my tip. Anyway, that's it for this week's show. Next week, we're transitioning for a week where we're talking about Star Wars to a week where we're talking about Marvel.
Wow. Exciting.
Yes. Next week, of course, it's finally here. Avengers Endgame, the wrap-up of the Avengers saga, the wrap-up of Phase 3. Although I heard somewhere that they're actually going to continue Phase 3 a little bit into the Spider-Man movie that's coming out this. But really, this is because that kind of falls back in the timeline, allegedly. It's confusing. But anyway, this is really kind of the wrap-up of the whole Avengers series, and it's exciting. We're going to be screening this on Tuesday in the afternoon on the 23rd. We'll be back with some social media response to it that afternoon. We'll have a spoiler-free written review for you sometime on the 24th, on the Wednesday, to let you know what we thought about it. And then when we get to our podcast next Sunday, we're going to give you a spoiler-free section and a spoiler-full section. So depending on if you've seen it, which apparently just about everybody is going to see this film, because they're saying it could hit 800 million in its first weekend, If you've seen it, then you might want to listen to the spoiler part. If you haven't, then we'll also have that spoiler-free area for you, so you can hear what we think about it, what we liked, what we didn't like, without giving anything away to you. And those will be definitely delineated. We'll have some sort of, I'll try and have a better alarm than I had last time for it, something that will be much more interesting, that's to split them up, and we'll chapter separate them, and whatever we need to do, we'll maybe put it right in the notes of when to fast forward, because we don't want to spoil anything for you at all, but we also want to be able to have the chance that so many people, by the time we put this podcast out, will have seen it to talk about the things we've seen as well.
Yeah, and if they're listening to it later in the week, may
or
have had a
even
chance as well.
Weeks later, because obviously we put these podcasts out, and they're out there for people. Sometimes don't find us for months after we put these out. So and they've seen Endgame several times. So we want to have that ability out there.
Right.
So that's going to be exciting. We're so excited to go see this movie.
Yes.
I mean, counting down the days since when they announced it, and then when we found out we were going to be able to go to the screening of it, and I've just been counting on the days. I'm so excited for Tuesday.
Oh, I know. Me too.
Yes. It's going to be fun. So, and then we'll, of course, have lots of other stuff for you, just like we have every show for you next week, and we are looking forward to getting back with you. And now, if you want to follow us in some of our stuff that we're going to be talking about, Avengers Endgame, again, we're not going to spoil anything for you. I promise we will not do that. You can follow us on social media, on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook and Instagram at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. And if you want to contact us at any time for any reason, as well as on social media, you can also email us at HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, and please do let us know what you thought of today's episode. If there's things that you would like us to cover in future episodes, we really want to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. We definitely love hearing from all our Hyperion adventurers. You people are great. We love you all. You found us today. In the future, you can find us on our website, HyperionAdventuresPodcast.com. That's also where I'll have that written review, spoiler-free written review of Avengers Endgame later this week. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also find us on SoundCloud, by the way. And I think we're going to have something hammered out this week where we have a new podcast server. I think I'm going to just finally do it this week. So there may be a couple bumps, but I think it'll be pretty seamless for you once we do that.
Right. So, and we do appreciate, as I mentioned earlier, tell a friend.
Tell a friend. If you got time, give us a rating and review. We really, really appreciate that. It all helps everybody else out there find that this podcast is something that they might like to listen to.
Yes. So thank you for listening to us already.
Thank you for listening. We appreciate you all. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You guys, really, I mean, we couldn't be continuing to do this podcast if you people out there weren't so wonderful. And just, oh, by the way, speaking of wonderful, I can't believe I went this far into the show without talking about Part of Our World podcast again.
Yes.
You guys,
yay! We're not worthy.
Really, you guys, you're just too sweet to us.
Yes.
Some of the things they say about us on Twitter. They did another thing. Someone put out there for Follow Friday. Nominate somebody who inspires you for this award on Twitter or whatever. And they said the sweetest things about us. And you guys are great.
Yes. And we really love listening to your podcast.
Yeah.
So if you haven't listened to them.
And eventually we're going to line up something where we get them on our show for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to try and work that out once we get. Oh, so we're also doing, I think we mentioned it in the past, we are going to do the virtual Run Disney 5Ks. We want you all to join us. We've got some other podcasts and bloggers that are going to take part in it with us. We haven't nailed down a date yet when these races are going to take place, but as soon as we do, we will be back to you, and we'd love to have you guys take part in that as well with us. So really, 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 really love to have you involved in this fun event that we're going to have out there, and get out and have some fun energy, excitement, and running or walking or whatever you want to do. So cool. All right, I've gone way too long. Let's wrap up the show. Thank you for listening to the Hyperion Adventures Podcast. We look forward to sharing some more time with you again next week. But until that time, I'm Tom.
I'm Michelle.
And we hope that you have a magical week.